What's up everybody, this is Memory Code. In this video I'm going to show you how to filter samples to make bass lines for your beats. Let's get into it. Alright, so basically filtering a sample to get a bass line just means using a high cut to cut out the highs and the mids, so all that's left is the low end. And there's a little bit more to it than that. I'm going to show you a few things I like to do to make the process a little bit easier and to make the end result better. And yeah, just in general, it's a good way to make your low end more grimy, and it's a good way to add a little bit more vibe and character to your beat. So yeah, just getting right into it. I got this beat going. Here's what it sounds like. And here's what the sample sounds like. So you can see I have this EQ cutting out the lows, and then I also have this multi-band compressor cutting out the lows. So if I shut those off, you can hear what the unfiltered sample sounds like. So yeah, you can hear there's some bass and some low end content in there. So I'm going to just be taking that and maximizing it and making it sound better. So the first thing I'll do is just copy it, just how I have it chopped right here. On Mac, press Command C, and then I'm going to paste it into a new audio channel. When I make beats, I like to keep my samples in one group, and then I'll keep my bass in a separate group. And I just do that because it makes sidechaining and mixing a little bit more easy. So yeah, I'll go up to my bass group and I'll put in a new audio channel. To do that on Mac, press Command T, and then to paste it, just press Command V. And you can see right here I already have my channel with the filtered bass sample. So I'll shut that off and I'll show you how I like to do it. First I'll rename this, and then I'll add an EQ. I like to use EQ8 just because it's quick and easy and it works really well. So yeah, I'll just turn on that high cut, also known as a low pass, and I'll set it to that 48 dB cut and put it to 120. And then I'll lower the volume because it's pretty loud. So here's what it sounds like so far. So it sounds pretty good. It's a little thin, and it's a little bit boring. I mean, it doesn't need to be the most exciting bass line ever because it's just supporting that sample, but it's not quite hitting where I want it to. And if I put a spectrum analyzer on there, you can see that first bass note is hitting at around 97 hertz. So it's not hitting in that sub range that I want it to. So I'll go into that sample clip. First, I'll change the color so it's a little bit easier to see. And if you want to do that, you can just right click on the clip and you get this drop down. And you can change the color. Then I'll go over here to the tuning. You can see I already have it pitched down 2 half steps. I have the whole sample for this beat pitched like that just because I like how it sounded. But I want to pitch it down a full octave below that. So when you're dealing in half steps, octaves are 12 half steps. So if I want to pitch this down an octave, I need to pitch it down 12 more half steps beyond -2. So that will put it at -14. So here's what that sounds like. And you can see it's lower, it's fatter already. And if you look at that in the spectrum analyzer, you can see it's hitting at around 48 or 49 hertz in that nice sub range that I wanted. So the next thing I'll do is just adjust the start time. If you go to the sample view, you can grab that little triangle and just move it in to adjust the start time. And then I'll go back up to the channel and I'll put in a little clip fade. So yeah, that's going to work for that first chop right there. And then over here, you You can hear there's a little bit of low end content, but it's pretty weak. If I shut off this EQ, the reason why I put that cut there is because I wanted the vocals to come in right there. But if I go to the sample view and I move that start time, you can hear there's that keyboard chord and a few other things. And it just comes in a little more strong right there. And if I put the EQ back on, you can hear that bass note just comes in with a little bit more presence. So even though it's not the exact same chop as the main sample, it'll still work. And then so now I have this lower note going into that higher note. So it just adds a little bit of movement also. So yeah, I'll just drag that out. I'll change the color too, so it's a little bit easier to see. And then put a little clip fade at the end. So yeah, that's going to work for those first two notes. And then for this note here, I didn't really need to do anything. I like how that was sitting. Just make the end time a little bit shorter. Put a little fade. I'll put a little fade in also. And then just turn the volume down a little bit. And then copy these first two notes for the third bar right here. So now you'll end up going from this higher note here into this lower note, back to a higher note. So it just adds a little bit more movement and makes it a little more interesting. And then yeah, for this last bar, I wanted to switch it up a little bit since the sample switches up. So for that, I used the bookend technique. So I just moved this clip over and deactivated it by pressing 0. And then I can go into this clip and adjust the start time, and I can scroll through the whole sample to find a section that is going to work. And you can hear there's a lot of notes and a lot of riffs that I can pick from. It's almost like having the bass player in the studio with me. But the reason why I wanted to have this bookend here, because if you don't have that, and then you go to the sample view and you scroll like that, the end time just extends out. So it makes it kind of hard to pinpoint what you want and keep it where you want it in the arrangement. But if you have that bookend, you can scroll through, and then you can also keep your chop right where you want it in the arrangement. So yeah, I did that, and then I pitched it down that octave, just like how I did with that first cut, to -14. And then yeah, all you need to do is just scroll through and find a slice that will work with your beat. So I found this section right here ended up working really well. And if I play that in context with everything, you can see that first bass note ends up coming in a little bit before the snare, which hits right here. So when you're finding sections to use, keep that in mind also, because if I had that come in a little bit later and start right when the snare starts, it loses a little bit of groove. So if I move the start time and have that note start a little bit earlier, a little bit before the snare, it hits a little better. But if you go too far, it feels a little bit rushed. So you can use that start time to kind of fine tune the pocket. And you could cut this clip into two separate ones and adjust them separately, but I like to keep them connected and just try to keep as much of the original natural groove as possible. So yeah, once you have your bass line arranged how you want it, there's just a few other things to do to make it sit better in the mix. The first is to make sure it's in mono. So to just go to utility and grab the mono setting. And I like to do that just because on a lot of old recordings there was a lot of experimental panning. So, with the basses and even the drums, they'd be panned a little bit. And when I make beats, I like to keep the low end in mono. It just makes the mixes cleaner and it makes the mixes sound better in a lot of different sound systems. So I'll use that, and then also I'll throw a glue compressor on there just to control the volume a little bit. So I'll set that attack pretty quick, turn on soft clip, and then just drop that threshold just to get some volume reduction on those louder notes. And it just makes the volume of that bass line a little bit more even. So yeah, once you have all that set up, you can just duplicate it out. On Mac, press Command D. And yeah, here's what it sounds like in context with everything playing. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the technique. When you're doing this, just remember to experiment with pitching it down an octave or sometimes even 2 octaves to get it sitting where you want. And then remember to experiment also with moving the start time within the sample just to find notes and riffs that will work for you. And one thing I forgot to mention, when you're doing that bookend technique, make sure warp is off, and then you'll be able to scroll through the whole thing. If you have warp on, then you can't really scroll out like that. It just is stuck wherever that first warp marker is. You can scroll in, but you won't be able to scroll the other way. But if warp is off, then you'll be able to scroll through and find a good section. Alright, so that's it for the video. I hope it was helpful. Hit me in the comments if you have any questions, and if you end up using this in a beat, definitely post a link in the comments. I'd be hyped to check it out. If you want any more information about funk and soul drum breaks and drum theory, check out my book, The Breakbeat Bible. I got a link in the description for that. I'm available for one-on-one music production and beat making lessons, and also I put together some visuals for the beat from this video, so check out the description for links for all of that. Thanks a lot for checking this out. Peace and much love.
Memory code.